Fathers of the Nation, Chapter 3. Professor Kimani joined the University of Nairobi directly as a senior lecturer. Even before taking off, he was already flying. There was a reason. Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda had just dismantled their University of East Africa. Kenya's part of the university, now renamed the University of Nairobi, found itself with a vacancy it had to fill immediately in its Institute of Development Studies. Professor Kimani, who had just completed his studies at the University of Oxford, wrote from there to say he wanted to fill it. To ensure he came and filled it for sure, the University of Nairobi raised his entry point from that of lecturer to that of senior lecturer. Fathers of the Nation, Chapter 3. Professor Kimani joined the University of Nairobi directly as a senior lecturer. Even before taking off, he was already flying. There was a reason. Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda had just dismantled their University of East Africa. Kenya's part of the university, now renamed the University of Nairobi, found itself with a vacancy it had to fill immediately in its Institute of Development Studies. Professor Kimani, who had just completed his studies at the University of Oxford, wrote from there to say he wanted to fill it. To ensure he came and filled it for sure, the University of Nairobi raised his entry point from that of lecturer to that of senior lecturer. So, not surprisingly, some of his colleagues, puzzled by his refusal to see that it was too radical, looked at him and then shook their heads in disbelief. Others, baffled by his inability to see that it was simple-minded, did or said little, convinced that he would fall on his face before long and self-destruct on his own without their help. He did not care. After all, his antics in the wars that he had started, and won, had also won him the heart of a campus beauty queen. Her name was Asiya Omondi. He married her on a rainy but approving Saturday, to claps of thunder and flashes of lightning. How marriage then accelerated academic success. A professorship soon followed. After that achievement, he felt fulfilled. His persona now was complete. Had anyone told him this happiness would one day end as it did, he would have laughed himself upside down. A global economic recession came. Africa was not spared. Jobs and incomes vanished. To get out of the crisis, Africa had to make changes. Changes, they were everywhere. Donors were the forces behind them, Tuni, Professor Kimani told his daughter. Tuni owed that name to Tunisia, believed to be her country of conception. Her father had gone there for a conference, her mother for the ride. What the donors did, Tuni, was to gang up on Africa, Professor Kimani said before he took a lick of his ice cream. He and his daughter were cooling off at some low-end restaurant in central Nairobi. "Look here, you Africa," the donors said with one voice. "You will get no more aid from us unless you change this, that, and the other, understand?" "What did Africa do?" Tuni asked. She was deep into her second ice cream. "Of course, Africa did as told," he said. "Mind you, the donors did well to hang tough. Were it not for them, we'd still be reciting foolish cliches about home-growing our own development strategies instead of importing foreign models." He took another lick of his ice cream and grimaced. Why, he wondered, had no whiz kid invented warm ice cream yet? "You're not enjoying your ice cream, Dad, are you?" Tuni asked. "It's too cold," he told her. Then he put it aside and continued. "Sadly, late changes only catalyze excess. When at last they come, people go on a rampage to make up for time they feel they have lost." Nowhere was this rampage more evident than in parliaments, the very institutions that epitomize change. Nowhere was excess more revolting than in a coup that a parliament staged. The parliament staged a coup? Yes, and they staged it successfully. Look. The year I started teaching, members of parliament, MPs, still earned less, I repeat, less, than professors did. Now, each MP rakes in up to 100 times, repeat, 100 times, the income a professor makes. It gets worse. Earnings by professors still consist of salaries, which are taxable, whereas earnings by MPs are no longer deemed salaries and have long ceased to be taxable. Both the rise in income by MPs and the exemption of that income from taxation came with the coup. I thought the days of coups were over. Ha ha ha. Think again, Tuni. Not only do we still have coups by soldiers, now we also have coups by lawmakers. These latter coups are even more lethal because they are legal. Is it legal for lawmakers to raise their wages as they please? Yes, it is. Why is that? Because legal only means permitted by those who make the laws, and MPs make the laws that raise their income. Legal does not mean moral or even normal. It does not? No. To seal their power against reversal, all that MPs need to do now is to amend the existing Constitution by inserting in it one tiny clause. Since God, himself, cannot lower the wages MPs give to themselves, then neither can mere MPs. Is that possible? Absolutely. After that has happened, the coup that brought these new wages about becomes irreversible. So, you see, parliaments can be even worse than armies. Tuni blinked uncomprehendingly. Worse than armies? She asked. She had her mother's eyes, wings of an imported butterfly, pure black in the middle, pure white at the margins, ringed with inch-long eyelashes. Whenever she blinked, her eyelashes fluttered as if they were about to fly her away. Dad, what do you mean? The eyelashes were fluttering. You see, Tuni, soldiers could stage coups, true. However, since they were not lawmakers, they couldn't legalize their action. In other words, they only broke the law, nothing more. Now MPs do more. They break the law and legislate that breach as the new law. That's what I mean. But when elections come, the electorate votes them out, right? Yes, just as when rains come, water washes off the spots of a leopard. Dad, I am serious. The wings of the butterfly were fluttering madly. Then listen to me. New parliaments are just like the old. No, they are more like the old. They raise their salaries more than did the old. The long and short of it, Tuni, is that nothing has really changed. Change in Africa has only replaced tyranny by presidents with tyranny by MPs. He paused to think, then he resumed. Come to think of it, the French have always had it right. They say, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Actually, we have had it right all along as well. We say, Mitu Empia, Nyani Wale Wale. New forest, same old monkeys? Asked Tuni. Correct. Dad, have you considered going into politics? Me go into politics? No, politics isn't for me. Teaching is. Guarding had come of age in Kenya. No longer was it the marginal activity it once had been. It had matured into a fully fledged industry. Now it did not stop at just home protection. It covered other areas as well. In the transport area, it meant vehicles full of touch-me, not anti-theft gadgetry. In the tourism sector, it meant tour operators warning foreigners against showing valuables in public. In the workplace, it meant seminars on personal safety and so on. Professor Kimani viewed this growth in guarding with disapproval, to which he added contempt. He considered it a symptom of failure by the state to ensure the safety of its citizens. His daughter held a more practical view. Mom and Dad, do you want to hear something clever that I did today? She asked her parents breezily at supper one evening. I attended a seminar on personal safety. That's what I did. Professor Kimani snorted. You call that clever? He helped himself to more food. Tuni, safety isn't a clever thing we do by attending seminars. It's a necessity the state should provide to us. And if it can't? He did not answer. She waited. Still no reply came. Finally, Asiya answered. Then safety becomes a private arrangement that we have to make for ourselves. Sia. Professor Kimani preferred this form of his wife's name to its full version of Asiya. Sia, all that any private arrangement would do is to exempt the state from even trying to render the services that our taxes oblige it to give us. Mother and daughter looked at each other knowingly. How often had they heard him express that view? Yet did it not ignore reality at the expense of prosperity? People who don't like poverty and want prosperity temper their views with reality. He did not. Look at each other all you want, he told his wife and his daughter. Next you'll be saying you want to hire your own police and army. What would remain for the state to do? Whatever you say, Dad, Tuni said with a sigh. But, before you change the world and get it to render the services our taxes oblige it to give us, some of us intend to keep on taking steps that assure our personal safety, such as precautions against male violence. Over 2/3 of women in this country witness it on other women or on themselves. I'm not joking, Dad. That's what the seminar instructor said. Tuni turned to her mother. Mom, as a woman, you should be showing me just a little more interest here. And I am, Tuni. Asiya sat up to show more of it. Go on, Tuni, please. She said there are 3 reasons why we women are easy prey. Asiya knitted her brow into a question. She? Yes, Mom. The seminar instructor was a woman. The first reason, she said, is a lack of awareness of where we are. As women, we should always be keenly aware of where we are and of what is going on around us. The second reason is a look of weakness and helplessness. Instead of looking weak and helpless, we should appear strong and in control. The third reason is a temptation to stray. We should never walk into bad neighborhoods, walk alone in alleys, or take stairs when there are elevators. Professor Kimani leaned back in his chair. Another slow day at the office, huh, Tuni? He sneered. Surely you knew all of that already. She glowered at him. Dad, this isn't about knowing. No, it's about doing. It is about women protecting themselves against animal criminals, male criminals, Dad. She made this remark sound as if her father, another male, might be a criminal. Asiya touched her gently in a calming gesture. Don't mind your father, Tuni. Now, what else did the instructor teach you? You're not going to like it, Mom. Oh, why won't I? Because it's what you do, and yet you should not do it. After completing an errand, shopping or whatever, women like to get in their cars and, said the instructor, just sit there for a while. Don't deny it, Mom. You do it too. No, I don't. Yes, you do. I do not. Never do it, Mom. A predator could be watching you. So, the moment you get in your car, lock all the doors and drive off at once. What if a predator has a gun and has cornered you before you get in? Asia's arms flew up in panicky surrender. Tuni, stop it. The predator has a gun? The arms rose higher. Then you comply, Tuni. You do as he says. Wrong. Listen to me, Tuni. I'm your mother. You comply. Mother. Comply, I said. Mom. Our instructor explained why it makes sense to run away instead. I don't care what your stupid instructor said. All right, Mom. Now, suppose you're driving with a predator seated beside you. Tuni, I'm not sure I want to hear this. Crash the car. What? Tuni, are you out of your mind? Crash it hard. This will immobilize the predator with surprise and allow you to escape. But our family only has that dying old Toyota. Yes, crash it. Tuni turned back to her father. By the way, Dad, is there any chance of me using the car tomorrow? He winced. The question might well have been dirt that an enemy had shot into his face to mock him. He fumbled for an excuse but told the truth instead. Our car is down again, Tuni, he said lamely. I'll have it fixed as soon as I get my next salary. Asiya was looking at him. Once, she had seen him as a young man going places. Now she only saw an old man going nowhere. His very car had become a metaphor about him. It was going nowhere as well. Later that evening, she offered him an idea. Karanja, leave the university, and go to greener pastures somewhere. In the words on the window this idea opened on him, she rubbed salt with a comparison. Newborn left the university and went to greener pastures somewhere. Now look, he is an MP with 4 cars. This hurt. Before going to Parliament, Newborn Walomu, a rowdy fellow from a minor tribe without roads or schools, had been a junior colleague of Professor Kimani's at the university. Yes, this hurt. So why did Professor Kimani not leave as well? Because he was a born teacher, he always told Asiya, and so a teacher he would die. Losers, such as Walomu, swam in money, he would explain. Only because even failed states have a few mansions. Since losers like to reward fellow losers, losers invariably end up occupying some of those mansions. Still, Losers they all were and always would be. First, there was a loud crash. Some moving object had hit another moving object. A trailer hooked to a truck negotiating a turn at a roundabout had broken free, spun outward, and ended up on top of a minibus in an adjacent lane. The drivers of both vehicles had then run away. They had done so to avoid mob justice. Now the passengers in the unlucky minibus were scrambling to get out, except for one, a woman trapped in her seat. A man had seen her on his way out. Since losers like to reward fellow losers, losers invariably end up occupying some of those mansions. Still, losers they all were and always would be. First, there was a loud crash. Some moving object had hit another moving object. A trailer hooked to a truck negotiating a turn at a roundabout had broken free, spun outward, and ended up on top of a minibus in an adjacent lane. The drivers of both vehicles had then run away. They had done so to avoid mob justice. Now the passengers in the unlucky minibus were scrambling to get out, except for one, a woman trapped in her seat. A man had seen her on his way out. A heavy trailer is sitting on her minibus, so how can she be fine? When the onlookers became a crowd, they tried to push the trailer off the minibus. They failed. Then a big van appeared. Ah, this could work, they said. What if the van hitched with the trailer through a chain, then drove off? It was a good idea, but the chain kept breaking. Each time the van pulled, the trailer rose up a little at its hitched end. Seconds later, the chain snapped, and the trailer fell back down on the minibus. Every time the trailer fell back down like that, people closed their eyes in fear because it punched the roof of the minibus down further. The situation could not have been any worse if an angry god in some dark cloud was using the trailer as a hammer to beat down on the minibus. 4 attempts later, the roof started yielding and crushing the woman down. Just then, a male giant came out of nowhere. He was carrying an axe. The crowd hushed. It was puzzled and perhaps scared. After realizing that he meant no harm, it relaxed and parted to make way for him. He walked towards the minibus. The moment he reached it, he spat on his palms, rubbed one against the other, and started working. Hack, hack, hack. He was still hacking when the minibus, now further weakened by his axe, gave in and collapsed. As it crumbled, amid groans of yielding metal, it compressed to the ground the poor woman trapped inside it. Her ordeal ended only after the minibus had squeezed out her final breath. So Karanja Kimani did not die in an act of male violence after all. Male violence she would have fought and, given her empowering seminars on personal safety, might have conquered. She died in a freak road accident in a minibus under a truck trailer. Mother and father were inconsolable. Then, at their daughter's burial, final in a way that ended all doubt and all hope about her, closure came. Grief sharing then turned into progress towards recovery. 6 months later, they were well enough again. One day, Asiya woke up dejected again. Not about Tuni this time, but about her husband. She seemed to loathe him all of a sudden. If he did as much as appear to touch her, she jumped back and shrank away. He pretended he understood why she did so. In the weeks that followed, he kept out of her path. If he nonetheless ran into her accidentally, he retreated at once, acting as if he had meant to go somewhere else. She saw through his lies. Only with the tiniest of wordless nods did she show she saw through them. For months, this was where matters stood. Then, one morning, wordless nods turned into wordless smiles. Good, he said to himself. Things were looking up. But she never really snapped out of her gloom. She still moped and moaned, and he still watched and waited. One evening, just after they had climbed into bed for the night, she dropped the bomb. "I'm leaving," she said. The bed creaked. "What do you mean you are leaving?" Professor Kimani asked. He knew the answer. She did not want to stay with him anymore. He pressed her. "What's going on, Asiya?" "Newborn has asked me to marry him," she said. This part he did not know. "Newborn Walomu?" he asked. Then he sat up in his half of the bed. "Yes, Newborn Walomu. I'm leaving tomorrow." "But why, Sia?" He did not wait for her answer. "Ah, it is his money, isn't it?" "How dare you, Karanja?" she shouted. Then she also sat up in her half of the bed and turned a bedside lamp on and glowered at him. "For you, I've done without money for over 30 years. Repeat, 30 years. And now you have the gall to say money is the reason I want to leave?" "Well, isn't it?" he retorted. "Look, Saya, money doesn't guarantee happiness." "Ha," she scoffed. Then she slid back into bed, turned to her other side, and wiggled away from him. The bed roared. "You talk of happiness. You? Have you no shame? You couldn't tell what happiness was if it fell on your lap and cried out its name." She wiggled farther away. "Then you say money doesn't guarantee happiness. Never having had it, how would you know that it doesn't?" "All I'm saying, Sia, is..." He slid back into bed as well. The bed protested that even the rich have their share of trouble, plus more trouble from their wealth. Ha! If their wealth were a problem, why don't they simply give it away? He tried a different approach, Tuni. "In any case, is this a good time for us to part so soon after the death of our daughter? Leave Tuni out of this," she shouted. "She would still be alive if you had a real car." That really hurt. "Tuni didn't die in our car, Sia," he said simply in self-defense. Then he tried another angle, age. What happened to couples aging together gracefully anyway? 60 is no age to part, surely, is it? "You mean I should have left earlier, before I turned 60? Well, I did not does not mean I should not, nor does I did mean I will. That is why if I did not leave before, now I should. And it is why if I did stay then, now I will not." She left the following morning. A secretary, young and pretty, met Professor Kimani at the main door, then smiled him in. Her smile, he now realized, had nothing to do with him. It was a remainder from some joke still floating in the air when he arrived. As proof of that fact, inside the room was another secretary, also young and pretty, who was smiling as well. In her case, she was smiling only with her eyes, her hands having clamped her mouth, pending her departure, after which she would pull all stops and burst out laughing. He introduced himself. Both women killed their smiles and scrambled to block access to a closed door in front of them. He knew who was behind that door. Newborn Walomu, MP. So, brushing the two girls aside, he went and opened the door anyway. And who sat before him now if it was not his archenemy? He was fat, and that was how Professor Kimani greeted him. "You, fat baboon." The man had been reclining in a black leather chair behind a shiny mahogany desk. Now he brought himself back into an upright position. Except for a mounted nameplate announcing him as Newborn Walomu, MP, the desk had absolutely nothing on it. "This is my office, Karanja," he said. "You will use nothing but civil language while you are in it. Do you understand?" Professor Kimani did not answer. What a triumph that already was, his enemy thought. Absence of an answer meant submission. To celebrate this easy victory, the man rocked in his chair back and forth first. Then he spoke again. "Karanja, was there something specific that you came to see me about?" Again, Professor Kimani did not answer. Another victory. This time, the man tried to celebrate it with a smile, but he killed it. Since his leaving the university, his belly had grown into a ball, big and firm. It should have become a handicap. Yet it had not. Was he not husband to 3 beautiful young women who had already borne him a child each? It paid for itself through reproductive success, which it owed to its cause, a seat in Parliament. He had won the seat in a by-election. Gunmen, scaring off pursuers, had killed his predecessor. A swaggering rogue whimsically nicknamed Kazi Kubwa Pesa Dogo, or Big Work Small Money, while he was wobbling drunkenly out of a bar. Now there, Mr. Kazi Kubwa Pesa Dogo's successor was sluggish and groggy like a satiated python with a hangover, in a big office furnished at public expense with black leather chairs and 2 pretty secretaries. "Karanja, take a seat," he said, gesturing at a chair. Professor Kimani rejected it. "Keep it." "Fine. Stand there forever if you like. See if I care. Let me guess. You came to ask why I want to marry Asiya. Am I right?" You have a nerve, you heap of. Watch your tongue, Karanja. I'm not going to warn you about your language again. Why do you want to steal my wife? The word I used was marry. You prefer steal? What good is she to you? Professor Kimani cursed himself for that wording. He had degraded not only his wife but also himself and, in the same breath, upgraded his foe. What good is she to me? Is that what you asked? Because she is much older than I am. Is that what you mean? Here is my answer. Old is gold. Mr. Walomu's opponents had a different answer. When a cat gets into a pigeon coop, they said, it kills all the pigeons it finds there, not just those it will eat. Mr. Walomu had already eaten 3 pigeons and now had in his paws a 4th, Asiya. Strewn along his path lay many others he had killed but not eaten. So who could say for sure that, months hence, Asiya would not become one of these? Mr. Walomu continued, as for what you call stealing, a professor in Texas says that lots of people do it. He threw in a Swahili cliché to support his claim. Na hivyo indivyo ilivyo. This is how it is. And that's how the cookie crumbles. That was mockery. Professor Kimani felt he had to reject. You have 3 beautiful wives. He began. This was a silly start, as even he realized. Had he not sounded an envious loser? Nonetheless, he went on. All of them are young. And young, they'll still be the day I die, Mr. Walomu added. Karanja, you know the saying, a real bull dies with green grass in its mouth. Then why do you want to steal my wife? She is old. Not the green grass you want in your mouth. I just told you why. Old is gold. Anyway, stealing, to use your word, is not all that uncommon, you know. My Texas guy says 30% of the British steal married spouses from their partners. Repeat, 30%. That is a lot of spouse stealers there, wouldn't you say? Professor Kimani refused to bite the man's bait. Still, the man continued. Now take the Americans. Contrary to what everyone thinks, Karanja, Americans are not great spouse stealers at all. They check in at a mere 17%, way behind the British. In fact, to cut a long story short, only the Greeks are greater spouse stealers than the British. Boy, do the Greeks know this spouse stealing business. They come in at a whole 40%. The man was now toying with Professor Kimani. Unable to tolerate it anymore, Professor Kimani moved to end it. You, greedy fat baboon, he shouted, closing in. The man stood up. Stop where you are, Karanja, he said. Professor Kimani kept coming. When he was near enough, he swung a fist. He missed. First you steal my wife, he said. He swung another. He missed again. Now you mock me as well. He swung yet another. This time he lost his balance and fell. Mr. Walomu pounced at once. Now you die, Karanja, he said. A clumsy scuffle, as between bull elephants, followed. It ended only when the police came and arrested the 2 angry men. Professor Kimani was charged with assaulting a member of parliament. His university followed suit by demoting him from his current rank as full professor back to his starting rank as senior lecturer. This, it said, was his due punishment for disgracing the university in the eye of the public. 6 months of jail followed. Then he was set free. We've never met before, Professor Kimani, the visitor said, but I've heard and read a lot about you. Here, my card. Thanks. Professor Kimani took it. I'm Tad, said the visitor. Tad Longway, Director of Special Projects at AGDA. Make that the Agency for Governance and Development in Africa. We are based in Cape Town, South Africa. Professor Kimani compared this oral information with that which was written on the card. So how can I help you, Mr. Longway? Sir Mark, also known as Mr. Mark Thatcher, is the son of former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, remarked the visitor. Does his name perhaps ring a bell? Perhaps it does, perhaps it does not. This self-negating answer was Professor Kimani's response not to the man's question but to the question's irrelevance. Sir Mark lives in South Africa these days, as you perhaps already know. Now, a few years ago he hired soldiers. No, mercenaries. Missionaries might even be a better word, actually. You see, they believed they were on a mission. But call them whatever you want. My point is, Sir Mark hired them to go stage a coup in Equatorial Guinea. Now, last year, the government of South Africa hauled him in and fined him $1 million. Add to that a 4-year jail sentence that it immediately suspended. Mr. Longway, you were saying the relevance of Mr. Thatcher's attempted coup in Equatorial Guinea to your visit here this morning is what again? Professor Kimani asked. Actually, I wasn't saying there was any such relevance, Professor Kimani. Still, you are right to suspect I was. Do you see what I mean? Professor Kimani shook his head. Actually, I don't. No, you don't? Then perhaps I should come in for a minute and explain, may I? All right, but for only a minute, okay? Please come in. He led the visitor to his living room. The man followed him. I'll be brief, Professor Kimani. Yes, please. He sat down. The man sat down too. Professor Kimani, all that our presidents ever do to us is to ride on our backs. Is that right? We must stop them from doing that to us. I mean us, Africans. Did you say us, Africans? Up to this point, the visitor had been speaking with a bitonal accent, seemingly mid-Atlantic for sounding both American and British. Now he switched to a South African accent, monotonal. Yes, I said us, Africans. Each word, throaty, had the sound of a big boot grinding gravel on an unpaved road. Pleasure key, money, I am I South Africans, or as we say back home, I Sefrican. So I am just as much ein Africans as you are. Don't you go judging me by the color of me cover? Amused against himself, Professor Kimani chuckled. I wasn't judging you by the color of any cover, Mr. Longway. I apologize if it seemed I was. Please continue. Thank you, said the visitor. His accent was bitonal again, American and British. As I was saying, Professor Kimani, we must not let our leaders keep riding on our backs and wrecking our lives, when our lives are all we've got. At independence, they told us our problems were 3: poverty, ignorance, and disease. They promised to eradicate all 3. Decades later, have they eradicated even one? Ha! Instead, they have added a 4th, corruption. And this time, you don't hear them promising to eradicate it because, as its primary beneficiaries, they mean to keep it. Result? Everyone has taken the cue from them and embraced corruption as well. Listen, I get sick each time I hear our presidents telling the police to stop taking bribes. Why should they stop when those who tell them to stop take even bigger bribes? I'll tell you something else, Professor Kimani. Our presidents are busy adding a 5th problem right under our noses: impunity. You can see how far they have gone with it by just looking at their reluctance to punish offense. They just don't want to do it. Now, will they change? No. To change, there has to be an agency with a will to change. I'm not sure I understand you, Mr. Longway. Are you saying you know of an agency somewhere that has a will to change Africa? Yes. AGDA. Make that agency for governance and development in Africa. Professor Kimani remembered the information on the visitor's card. Yes, that's your outfit. No, that is our think tank. You see, Professor Kimani, when presidents keep messing things up, public discontent accumulates until it becomes anger, later, rage, and eventually, fury. Yet, even as fury, it never really produces change. Why doesn't it? Well, because fury spills out in random acts of violence. Those acts cancel one another out. To bring change, they have to add up instead. Do you follow me? Professor Kimani put a hand over his mouth to kill a yawn before he spoke. I'm listening, he said. Please continue. So Professor Kimani, now enter AGDA. Our mission at AGDA is to question Africa's status quo. We ask what it will take to develop this continent. Therefore, we also ask if human effort is up to the task, or if, instead, we need supernatural help, or indeed, if Africa will ever develop. Along the way, we bump into an unnerving question. Are present leaders helping or impeding Africa's development agenda? Mr. Longway, I'm now sure that there has been a mistake. You've confused me with someone else. You see, I am a teacher. So I am not the activist you're looking for. A teacher is an activist, Professor Kimani. May I tell you why? No. Here is why. A teacher's job is to coach people towards a better future. An activist's job is to coax them towards that future. You have to admit the two sound as if they might overlap, and they do overlap. While there may be some differences between our methods and yours, there are bigger similarities between your ultimate objectives and ours. Now, if your worry is about the differences, know we will always accept your recommendations about them throughout the path that we would like you to follow. There is a path you would like me to follow. Yes, path alpha. Path what? Alpha. You see, path alpha is strategy built on the idea that I mentioned earlier, that, at present, public discontent expresses itself in acts that cancel out instead of adding up. Path alpha will correct that anomaly. Mobilizing civic discontent into will to change is our motto. Unless there is will to change, there will be no change. So says the law of will. It's all in here. The man held up a document titled Path Alpha, then handed it to Professor Kimani. Yours, he said. Professor Kimani accepted the document, but laid it aside. Then he asked, "Why did you pick me as a possible recruit?" "Because you fit the profile of a Path Alpha traveler to a T is why. By the way, the correct term is traveler, not recruit." "There is a world of difference between the two, Professor Kimani." "I'm sure there is. So what is the profile of a Path traveler?" "A Path Alpha traveler." "You left out the Alpha." "Well, the profile only has two elements really. One, the traveler must believe in Path Alpha. Then you've determined that I already believe in Path Alpha, or that I soon will. But by what means? When you do not even know me." "Goodness, you've just met me. So how have you worked it all out like that?" "From your history, Professor Kimani. From your history, that's how." "We looked at your past as an idealist." "You have? You think we haven't? Sorry. Please continue." 2. The Path Alpha traveler must have the drive to pursue goals and the tenacity to stick with them, the visitor added. "For Path Alpha, these two qualities are indispensable. And, of course, you have established that I have the drive and tenacity," remarked Professor Kimani dryly. "I won't ask how you did it. From your history again, Professor Kimani, from your history again," said the stranger. Then he smiled and, apparently, also winked. He had reached the end of his presentation now. "Path Alpha is a noble cause, Professor Kimani," he added. "Please join us. We will cover all of your expenses and remuneration, of course, all of them. Suppose I join you. Be careful here now. I'm not saying I will suppose. What exactly will you want me to do?" "There will be many opportunities for me to answer that question fully later. Now, let me just tell you two things. First, if you join Path Alpha, we'll want you to come down for orientation at our headquarters in Cape Town. Second, we'll want you to attend the next summit of Africa's heads of states, scheduled to take place soon in Banjul, the Gambia." "Me attend a summit? When I wouldn't even be allowed to come near the gates?" "Don't worry, Professor Kimani. AGDA will get observer status for you. Leave that to us." "So what do you say?" "I'll think about it." "Yes, let it stew in your mind on its own for the rest of the day while you do other things. Then, tonight, retrieve it and mull over it between the sheets. Kick it back and forth, back and forth." "I said, I'll think about it," he almost shouted. He enlisted the following day. Loss of a daughter, desertion by a wife, and mistreatment by his university and by the state. These had tested him hard and long. Finally, he had reached breaking point. He used to think he was born to teach and to die a teacher. Such was not the case anymore. Now all he wanted was a way to walk out of teaching without saying goodbye, a way to run away, never to come back. He wanted, in short, a new project demanding that he leave home at dusk one day and, without informing anyone, head for a brighter future somewhere beyond the darkening horizon. Suddenly, there was it. Path Alpha.